Good evening. Welcome to the City of Farmers Branch Planning and Zoning Commission study session. It is presently 6 p.m., Monday, April 8th, 2024. I'd like to begin by thanking the commissioners for their service. Up first, study session, item A1, discuss regular agenda items, which takes us to item C1, consider approval of the March 25th, 2024 Planning and Zoning Commission minutes and take appropriate action. Commissioners, any errors, notes? Okay.
Just one minor item on section A1. Discuss let's see, second section regarding public hearing, item D1. Second bullet. Third line, it says discussed Bitcoin storage. Actually, the reference was Bitcoin mining.
Mining, yeah.
Gotcha.
Oh, I can make that correction.
It's minor, but
No, that's good.
Oh, no, that's important. Thank you for that.
All right, commissioners, any other errors, corrections, typos? All right, seeing none, we will move to item D1. This will be conduct a public hearing and consider the request for a zoning amendment for mixed-use development on approximately 10.18 acres located at 1960 LBJ Freeway and take appropriate action. We'll be presenting this one.
You know, I'll actually be presenting this item,
Okay.
Madam Chair, and so if anyone has any general questions on this, we can try to address those questions now, or we can wait till we go downstairs. Any thoughts?
I have a general question.
Sure.
The sign height, 50 feet versus whatever, our standards, what, was it 30, 35?
Let's see, I think the PD, correct me if I'm wrong on that, 40 feet was what the PD said?
The pattern book recommends 40, and the zoning ordinance regulates signs along that highway, the limits to 40 feet.
The illumination affect the apartments across the lake, the apartments on the other side of the freeway.
There'll be apartments right next door.
Yeah, I mean, is it gonna flash, blink,
Well, it's an LED, so they can do, you can program it to do whatever you want it to do.
Well, but we have requirements that say, and correct me if I'm wrong on that too, Sarah, but there's a section within our code that addresses LED signs. And so that sign can't change, it can't be animated. It can't change, or if it does change, it has to change after so many seconds. And then the illumination has to be of a certain, it can't blind people, obviously, but there's some regulations and standards that are already embedded into our code of ordinance for LED signs.
what I was thinking about really is if it's gonna run all night, all day, certain hours, because there's gonna be somebody in an apartment close by where their bedroom window, it shines or illuminates, and you're gonna get complaints, I can't sleep now because the sign's up. I'm wondering how other people control that issue. I'm kinda all for the sign.
Gotcha.
directly across the street from, I'm sorry, Harold, but directly across the street from where that sign is
Right.
not apartments. It's,
Office. I think
it's a
office.
warehouse.
It's a warehouse. On the
It's a
other side.
tile store warehouse.
And then I think next to that are their
Oh,
apartments after that.
is the hill in the way?
And there, well,
We're gonna
Okay.
pull it up on the big screen.
Right. I think what we're referring to is that there are apartments going to be built next to that location.
Yeah.
So I think
there's-
it's for the future, and that will be close to the sign. They'll be on the same side.
Yeah, no, that is slated, and where Sarah's showing up on the screen right now, where her cursor is, future apartments are already slated. We haven't gotten plans for these to be constructed yet, but by right, there's apartments that are allowed to go there. On the opposite side, you are correct, it looks like that's more of a is that a warehouse?
Yeah, the warehouse is further over.
okay, you're right. I
Warehouse.
stand corrected.
Those are all
So
aware.
those are apartments, but on the opposite side of 635, which is a little bit of a distance on the other side. Again, this is
Well, nobody's gonna notice it until it goes into operation.
true.
I mean, that's what's gonna happen.
Right.
And my only thought process is, do we need to think about, or does the ordinance cover the hours of operation? I mean, can we cut them off at 12 or 1 o'clock in the morning? or
Actually,
2 o'clock or
this
sometime
this
like-
board has the authority to set certain conditions. Right, absolutely. If the desire was to have that to be shut off during a certain time, I mean, that's
Well,
the whole point of
and that-
bringing
and
this
that may
through.
be okay with the operator. I'm just saying,
Yeah, I think from our perspective, from staff's perspective, we saw this as, I know the applicant has stated that this sign is needed just to generate business and make sure that
These are the
folks.
people I was thinking about right here, really, first thought.
I gotcha.
Those down there.
That's a long ways.
Well, and the sign is probably canted
And there's,
Facing-
and there's
yeah.
a building
freeway
between.
too.
Right. The other thing, I don't remember exactly the ordinance that you refer to, but I did go back and read it, and after I had those same concerns, and after I read the existing ordinance, I thought, yeah, it seems pretty reasonable. Illumination is just decreased by something like 50% at nighttime.
Right. Which
So
we
it's not to blind drivers along LBJ.
We could bring that ordinance up. We could pull that section up so you folks
And,
can
and it has supposed to go dark for a certain number of seconds between images, so it can't flash in a moving picture.
see. Right.
And so there was other things that, once I read that, I was like, yeah,
I think
that all
there's a
seems
distance
pretty reasonable.
requirement too. Like
Yeah.
you can't have that type of sign, again, for like so many distance.
But I've been to Boardwalk many times and driven by it many times. I agree, they need a sign. No, but you don't, if you don't know what's there, you're not gonna stop because you can't see it from LBJ. They really need a sign and we want them to succeed, so.
And I think that's really why they're asking for this. And what she has up on the screen right now, that pretty much outlines what's required. Maybe we can make that a little bigger with the 3 dots.
Thank you, yeah.
Let's see. So the rolling, scrolling, flashing, image movement is prohibited. All of this is still going to need to apply for the most part, with the exception of like the size of the sign. The size of the sign that they're looking for is, 60,
The LED portion
Yeah, just
is
the
about
LED portion.
435 square feet.
yeah.
So I'm thinking this will be something like the signs that are further west on LBJ in front of the restaurant strip by Whiskey Cake and along there.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Would you normally run a sign like that, like from midnight to 6 or 7 in the morning? I don't know.
That's a question that we could ask the applicant when we actually do the presentation.
I'm sure we would be open to, not running that at.
If you don't mind, we'll hear from you during downstairs. Thank you.
That's all I had.
Yeah, that was just my question, because this will be the first of its kind in Farmers Branch, right? Or I'm just looking for precedent, so that in my mind, I can get a good idea of, because sometimes I have, the scale of things I don't quite get until I see it.
Yeah, I'm trying. Do we have another electronic sign?
We have some other LED signs, but nothing to this scale.
Yeah, not 430.
Or like maybe over in Irving again, is there one there that's the
Yeah, they have.
similar size?
Yeah, there are. There's a couple, especially on the south side of LBJ, between Beltline and MacArthur.
Right?
There's a couple of signs like that.
This gives you somewhat of a scale. You can see that
Yeah.
person standing on bottom there, but it is a pretty large sign. But again, we'll present this to everybody during the presentation.
Other items we want to discuss during study session, questions for staff?
Yes. What is the occupancy of this event center? Venue? Do we
Oh, okay,
know?
yeah, the number of folks that can actually be housed in it. So, do you mind pulling up the?
The site plan.
Yeah. And I think we ended up with square footage for that was going to be.
It's a little over 10,000.
Yeah. So as far as the occupancy, did we actually calculate?
Like for building code?
Yeah, for building
I don't think
code.
we have that number. We could find out.
Yeah, we could definitely get that for you. I think from our perspective, we were looking at it more from a parking perspective.
And that's why I'm asking.
Mhm.
Because, I mean, everything, I'll just speak to it in general.
Sure.
Everything in Mercer Crossing does not have enough parking. Period,
Gotcha.
end of story. It's a hot topic. I've
Right
said
on.
it before.
That makes sense.
It's super frustrating, so that's why I was asking.
Yeah.
If you have an event there, that parking lot is not that big.
Yeah, if you can you go to our table real quick? So PD 99 doesn't address event centers. So
Yeah.
part of this request is to add that use along with the commercial amusement, which is more for the pickleball side.
Right.
When you look at our CZO standard for an event center, it's 1 to 1,000. Now, again, at one point in 2001, the city decided to become a little bit more laxed on event centers. For whatever reason, it was approved at one space per 1,000 square feet.
Marcos, per 400
Oh,
square
I'm sorry,
feet.
400 square feet. I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm looking at commercial amusement. So one space per 400 square feet. What the applicant is requesting is that be one space per 150 square feet for their event center. So it's actually more stringent than our requirement, but again, PD 99 doesn't address it, and because PD 99 supersedes our CZO in this case, that's where the request is coming into. So right now, they're looking at it to be more of a 1 to 150 situation. So this essentially is a breakdown of the number of parking spaces that are out there right now. They've always had 393 spaces. Ultimately, when you look at everything that they're asking to do, they're really getting to a 419 number. So there's still a deficit of about 26 spaces. If you compared that to our CZO, it's kind of mind-boggling, but our CZO would only require 175 spaces, which again is, would never work. So the applicant did provide a parking analysis. The parking analysis has been updated by the developer also. So they provided both sheets. So both sheets should be in this packet.
They were.
Yeah, so I believe the last sheet, which is just an Excel sheet, that is the updated sheet that was provided by the applicant. So you're right, parking is important in this case, although they account for share ride, and they look at it from, well, there's this new trail that's going to be, coming from the apartment complexes and the hotels, and people can walk, but you can't always rely on that also.
No.
Not
So
at all.
people
I
love
don't-
their cars.
I wouldn't factor that in at all. I mean,
Absolutely.
I understand some people might, but
It's almost a mile.
it's almost a mile, and if it's
Understood.
hot at all, it's not going to happen. No one's going to do that in the month of August.
Absolutely. So that's something to consider, But this is what the applicant is asking for. They are asking to keep the status quo of 393 for these new uses.
I mean, and the fear is that the apartments would be unduly burdened by people that aren't residents parking there. And this would be separated by a river with the bridge going
Pull that
to it.
aerial- aerial up.
So it would be a significant
Yeah, if you
step
look at
to go over.
It would be, and I think if parking spills over, and this is the odd thing about this particular development, is that there's no houses that are up against. This isn't like the Luna case where you've got this apartment complex and you've got a single-family development right behind it. In this case, there's really nowhere for it to spill over. So actually, these folks
They would have
just
to cross the bridge over the water.
Right, exactly. They would have to park where these apartments are, or they'd have to park over where the hotels are located and literally walk. That's where the spillover would ultimately occur. Now, is that a good thing or a bad thing? It's one of those things where I don't know. I think the applicant will be able to address that because that's loss of business for them. If it's too crowded, people just won't go there.
I mean,
Right.
the
Again-
most impacted apartment would be the one that's proposed to be built next door.
Next door would be the
Right.
most impacted. Now, that apartment complex, we have a preliminary, is it a detailed site plan that we have for that? It's a conceptual plan. So the conceptual plan still requires them to build a parking garage, which visitor parking should still be incorporated into that parking garage. There is some parking that's slated around that. Now, that parking, again, the way this is set up, they're supposed to have shared parking and shared access through all that. So, yeah, absolutely. Anything that it will absolutely spill over into those apartments as well if this starts generating a lot of buzz and a lot of business. I think the applicant is looking to try to have a parking problem because they want to be successful. And I think in their minds, parking problems are successful. But from the city's perspective, we have to still be cognizant of for safety and for, you know, a lot of different, traffic congestion. I mean, these are important to us. So,
But as planning and zoning commissioner, we're not doing our job if we say, okay, knowing that that's going to be a parking problem. Because before the meeting started, I was telling a story that last Saturday I went to Black Agave, left, went under the bridge and came back around, and the apartment complex right there, right where Sarah's cursor is, overflow apartment parking was actually on the highway service road in the grass.
oh, that's not good.
There were several 18-wheelers, and there were people parking their cars
Really?
right
Okay,
there.
yeah, that's not good.
So, and then along the streets and stuff. And I was like, I've never seen it that bad.
Wow. Yeah.
So
Was
my
that due to
concern.
the eclipse? People in town?
It was last
or-
Saturday.
No, there's always
It was,
18-wheelers
okay.
on that stretch parked.
Yeah, and that's something that we probably could
There is
that's
18-wheelers
on
on.
the Texas Department of Transportation's right away, but 18-wheelers should not be parking along that service road. So we'll definitely make a note of that.
No.
That should not be
They're
occurring.
probably staging to get back into that warehouse area.
It was
That'd
nighttime.
be my guess.
They're, it's nighttime. They're parked there at night.
No, I think it's apartment residents who are truck drivers parking
That
their
could be it,
trucks
too.
on the access road and then walking to their apartments.
It's very possible. It's very
We had a
possible.
problem with them parking actually in Mercer Crossing by the amenity center in Chartwell Crest,
Yeah.
along Chartwell Crest.
Yeah.
So
No, that's understandable.
Where's the trail, the new trail that has been built?
You know, could you bring up Google Earth for us real quick? They actually just posted this on Google Earth as well. That trail, and I believe that trail is a 12-foot wide trail. It's either 10-foot or 12-foot.
I think it said 12 on the,
Nice wide
on the.
Pretty wide trail. I mean, it's meant for bicyclists and pedestrians. Obviously, no motor vehicles are allowed on that.
Have you been on it, Pat?
I've just seen it from the patios.
Yeah, let's zoom into that. And then, Sarah, hit where it has the, next to the sun at the very top, where you go back in time, go off to the left. Yeah, hit that first one right there. There you go. Now zoom in. So you can see how that trail connects into Mercer, into the boardwalk. It does go underneath Luna, across the creek or river. And it ties into where the well, I guess there are apartments and hotels on that other side, the peninsula. It ties into the peninsula, essentially. Now, it also does tie into these apartments off to the south also as well. And I guess businesses that are there too, office buildings. But it is an active trail. It's open. People can walk at this moment. Sure.
My question on the parking, I was confused as to whether the new building 6 is included in the requirements. In some places, it looked like it wasn't included, in some of the numbers it was.
Yeah, could you bring up
And the
the
change
site
in the
plan?
numbers didn't match the change in requirement due to that new building 6.
Is this, I was going to say, this one doesn't show the building 6. I mean, it doesn't. So where is it? Is it that green one there?
Yeah.
Is that what that is?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's where the new building 6 is.
Okay.
We'll get the updated plan in there.
Yeah. And Sarah, maybe you can speak to this. I know you've looked into this, the plan itself. Now, the study considers all 6 buildings, but 6 buildings that were, and that's what we explained in the staff report also, is that those 6 buildings were from a previous version. And so what the applicant did is they provided a new version, that table that recalculates those uses and those number of buildings for the number of parking spaces that they feel are adequate or, satisfactory to this site. That's essentially what they've provided.
And you'll see on the table in each case, those requests are more stringent or provide more parking than our comprehensive zoning ordinances.
Yeah, our comprehensive zoning ordinance is definitely more lax, but I know the PD standards definitely held a little bit more of a higher standard.
Right.
The PD also, it falls back to the CZO. So there's a paragraph in that PD that states that if you're under the commerce use, which all uses are considered commerce unless it's residential. So in this particular case, if there's a use that's being introduced, we're supposed to fall back on the CZO. So if we fall back on our CZO, I'm actually using 1 to 400 for an event center, and I'm using 1 to 1,000 for a commercial amusement, which would be far less than what the applicant is asking for. And that's how these things get very, they get a little complex and complicated because it's not a one-size-fits-all. Like, every situation's a little different. But I can absolutely agree with the parking concerns, because I've always had parking. I have parking concerns for everything. I mean, without a doubt. Even when the Star Centers came over here, I had parking concerns about that. Like, that's just, people drive their cars, plain and simple. It's just what people do.
I mean, I would almost be more concerned about the applicant because of the amount of cars trying to park at the apartments. They would be looking for their overflow parking and trying to park in this parking lot, as opposed to overflow from the events coming into the parking for the apartments.
Oh, I see what
It's
you're saying.
almost a reverse.
If the apartments were there, do you feel like they would be
They,
overflowing?
if we truly have an apartment overflow issue, they would be looking to this apartment or this parking lot to go use their parking, rather than the events and the people trying to go to this location retail coming and parking in the apartments and walking over.
Think about one Saturday night on a nice day. Look what Chicken and Pickle does in South Grand Prairie. It's packed. It's packed all the time. So one event at the event center and a nice day for pickleball, it's done. I mean, you're going to have people parking on the highway. You're going to have people parking on the feeder road, or people just turning around and leaving.
Then they could say.
Chicken and Pickle, I feel like it's a bigger event center than this one. What is this one, 6?
6,000.
Courts?
I think it's 12 courts.
12 courts. Chicken and Pickle has,
There's 6,000.
I'm just based on the
square feet.
popularity of it.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Is there,
7, 8,
can you
10,
quickly
10.
make a guesstimate as far as what the occupancy will be on the event center? That's kind of a number, seems like it's kind of important.
it's what, 13,000 square feet?
10.
10,000?
10,000 square
You
feet.
can have what, one person per 5 square feet?
No.
That's the occupancy by the fire marshal.
Yeah, we can text Scott and maybe see if he can get us, like, from a fire perspective, like what the actual
You'll
max
set some
occupancy.
number on it.
Yeah, which they do. I mean, they have to look at it from a max occupancy. So every space is accounted for a person. Yeah, that's not a problem. We could probably get something by the time we have the meeting, hopefully. Yeah.
Another thing I noticed in the parking analysis, where they have a table on the, I think it's the second to last page, they show Building 6 as Skyrocket Burger, having half of that square footage, requiring 16 spaces at 150 feet. But then they assume that the other half of that building is some unknown retail, which has a lower parking requirement. But if that other half of that building turns out to be restaurant, then the requirement would be 16, not 10. So just another exacerbation of the parking shortage, potentially.
So you said there would be then 6 additional spaces that may not be accounted for if that use, the
Exactly right.
the future.
If the future use of that is restaurant as opposed to retail. And some of the language here said something about a medical office.
Which would be lower, potentially, right? Yeah.
And during the day, Monday through Friday.
Yeah, and that would be, counter-cyclical.
True.
There's no intended drive-through
No drive.
on this. No like coffee drive-throughs or.
No. No drive-through in this case.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, with that, we'll move to item D2, conduct a public hearing and consider the request to amend the comprehensive zoning ordinance to define card room as a use within the city and adopting regulations applicable to such use, including but not limited to amending Article 2, zoning districts and uses, Article 4, site development standards, Article 5, special districts, and Article 7, definitions, and take appropriate action. Commissioners, well, first, who will be presenting this one?
I'll present this one
Okay,
also.
great. And Commissioners, questions for staff?
Is there any type of planned usage for this, or is this just being generally asked for?
Yeah, we have to go through this general process first, only because we've concluded that this use does not exist in our use table. So the only way we can move forward with somebody making a request to do a card room is to go through this initial process for new and enlisted uses, which is required through Section 2 of our code. And that's what's bringing this to the forefront right now.
So there is for sure a specific use for this.
Yeah, but again, they won't submit that until this gets resolved first, if this gets approved into our table.
What cities in North Texas have this already?
Oh, wow. So just looking around the DFW area, Dallas, Fort Worth, Burleson. We've seen Carrollton, but apparently it's not in Carrollton, but it is in Carrollton. Watauga. Those were really the areas that we looked at within just our city limit, within the DFW area. We also looked at, there's various cities that go well beyond this. I mean, we're talking Lubbock, Midland, Georgetown, Round Rock, Webster, Houston. But in the DFW area, that's really where we've seen them, is more on the Tarrant County side, and then obviously Dallas also as well.
The one's right by San Moon, right?
Yeah, it's,
There's one, really a stone throw away from here in Dallas, which I think they operate at I believe they're a 24-hour facility. But they've been operating for a while now, absolutely.
I didn't see any mention about food or alcoholic beverages.
My next question.
Is there, how does that factor in? Could a card room come in and want to do that, and then we would have to approve it, or how, or is that in any?
Right.
So what's the?
Through the SUP, we figure if it's going to go through, if something like this is going to get approved, that's really going to need to go through a specific use permit. Those types of items can be addressed through a specific use permit. So when it comes to food, which obviously gets health involved and it gets other departments involved also, sometimes these card rooms have beverages, non-alcoholic. Some, I don't know if they actually can serve alcohol or not. I know there's a completely separate TABC state process that goes along with that. But when it comes to food and entertainment, all of that would probably have to be involved in that SUP process. How we're writing this right now, we're not including any of those additional items at this time.
And since there's not an actual applicant, the way of sort of getting around the no gambling, number one, it's a private venue, private club. Okay, got that. Number two, though, is that only the players can make a profit. When normally in a poker house, you take a rake.
Right.
I mean, so that, I was trying to get a sense for how, why isn't number two still in violation? I mean, because they're obviously they're making money, so they are not, it's not just the players that are making an income.
They typically make money from the seat and the membership. That's how they make money. At least that's how the business plan works. That's how these folks have been able to operate within the state. Is that there is no rake, there is no house in this case. So you buy your seat, you buy your membership, and then you buy that seat, and that's where the money comes from.
Do we have a feel for attendance? And where I'm kind of going with that is traffic, parking, hours of operation. In that particular area, there is primarily an industrial area, big trucks. So I mean, cars and trucks don't really mix.
Understood.
So I'm just, did y'all look at that aspect of, what's going to happen over there?
Sure. I mean,
As opposed to just coming up with an ordinance to operate.
right. Now, again, I think traffic's always going to depend on the size of the venue. You could take a 1,000 square foot card room versus a 35,000 square foot card room. And obviously, you're going to have different traffics, different traffic
Right.
congestion situations. So I think a lot of times the TIA is going to depend on the size of the venue.
Well, I just remember that building having furniture in it.
Right, the building
I
that you're
mean,
talking
that's-
about, right.
I can't remember the park, and I just don't have a good feel for that.
Well, and again, that's why I think from staff's perspective, we're looking at this from the EOD perspective, or the Entertainment Overlay District, because that's really what the Entertainment Overlay District is meant for. It's meant more for revitalization, socialization, entertainment. When it comes down to the parking side of it, you're right. We've taken a stance as far as one space per 400 square feet is what we're looking at, but that's only because when you look at all the other uses that we have, whether we're talking about restaurants, bars, I believe retail, I have a table that we can look at together also on this. That is where we ended up coming up with 1 to 400. Now again, in all of these situations, when you're talking about the EOD area, you're probably talking about an industrial building that had a completely different use than what this new use is intended to be. So no different than when I believe everybody was here when we talked about malls also. You're kind of fitting a square peg into a round hole, or you're trying to, because this use that existed there before was meant for trucks, or was meant for lighter vehicle use, or whatever. And now you may have a use where you've got tournament plays, and it's like maybe it brings in more people.
If it's an entertainment overlay district, that's going to happen, right?
Right.
I mean, that's just the
Yes.
nature of laying entertainment in there.
That's where I was getting at, is that sometimes these entertainment overlay districts, whether we're talking, and we kind of learned about this through Bishop Arts and through the design district, when you start bringing in these adaptive uses or these different uses, sometimes flexibility when it comes to parking is all going to have to run through that SUP process also. So if folks are wanting to, go less stringent or have more flexibility on the parking standard that we set, that's really where that SUP is going to come into play. Because that SUP will allow them, depending on, this is a case-by-case situation too. Not every case is going to be the same. So in some instances, it might make sense to be a little bit more lax on the parking. In other instances, it may not be. But it just depends on that situation. Until we get all the details and bring it to you or to this board and to city council, that's kind of the burning question.
Do you suspect this SUP is going to follow the lease or going to follow the building?
Yeah, the way we've written the ordinance also is that SUP expires. It will expire if there's a change in ownership. It will expire if there's a change in name. We've actually taken a pretty stringent stance on this, the way we've written this. So SUPs normally run with the land, but SUPs can be written how the city wants to write that, ultimately. So there is no universal law for SUPs. It's the municipality's way of doing it. So if we want that SUP to expire for whatever reason, it can expire. We just have to write it that way. And that's how we've written the ordinance so far at this moment. Now, again, that can all change. I think we're just taking a very cautious stance on this, only because we've seen what's happened with Dallas. We've seen what's happened with some other cities. And, they've allowed, and then now they're wanting to change their minds on certain things. And I think for us, if we're going to move forward with this, we just want to take a very cautious stance.
Can you be more clear about that? Like, what are you referring
Yeah,
to?
yeah.
Oh, to Dallas?
Like the issues.
Oh, Dallas?
Yeah.
Well, so like the city of Dallas, they had, they've issued COs for a few poker rooms. And then later on, we actually have a slide on this also, but, they ended up changing, I guess for the most part, they changed their mind they felt that those COs were actually sent out in error. So by doing that, now they wanted to recall the COs. Well, I believe they ended up, if I'm saying this right, and I probably need to see the slide to go through the list of how they've handled this, but in any case, they're in active litigation at this moment right now, because apparently the city sued their ZBA and they lost against their ZBA, or hopefully I'm saying that correctly. I have it up here right now. This is what I have up on the screen. They have 2 card rooms. They issued them as commercial amusement inside. The interpretations later on said that they were in error. And as I showed here, litigation is still ongoing. And then in 2023, the city council actually directed staff to reconsider the new land use category. And so all of this is all in the making, but that's just it. Like they're having to go backtrack and start all over again. I think from our perspective, if something like this was to come to our city, we just want to be very careful. You know, there are some cities out here in Texas that they do not define game room. They do not define card rooms. They just allow it as indoor amusement, entertainment. That's it. Round Rock's a good example of that. Georgetown's a good example of that. There's multiple cities that do that. in
You're
our
talking about something like card games at the American Legion Hall?
They
or
treated
bingo, or-
yes, exactly. They treat it no different than a bingo hall, than a billiards room. There's no difference. They don't see this as any different as those uses. So that's where this thing gets it's complicated because state law doesn't necessarily, they've never really made like a full-fledged judgment on if this is illegal or not. It's one of those things where the municipalities are kind of left to figure out how they want to handle a request like this. So that's where we're at right now.
Have any residents of Farmers Branch, has there been any groundswell to say, gee, we'd really like to have card rooms in this city? Or is this only coming from people that want to put them in?
Yeah, this is coming from people who want to bring them
Okay.
in. I mean,
So-
we've had requests from Mercer Boardwalk is interested in looking at something like this. We've had folks on the east side that are looking at wanting to do something over there, and that's what's really, it's outside folks that are coming in saying, hey, this is of interest to them.
And what
so-
do you see as the benefit to Farmers Branch of having this
Sure.
adult entertainment?
Sure. I mean, I see it, that's just it. I see it as just purely entertainment. I'm very indifferent when it comes to this particular use because it is a form of socializing and a form of entertainment. Now, again, I think, some folks like it, some folks may not.
It's just staff is not going to give a recommendation.
No.
Notice that.
Well, because again, it is considered, I mean, it's entertainment. But we understand that this is still the topic of gambling, it's not so clear from a state level. Again, the state of Texas hasn't necessarily given like much direction. You almost want to say, and I think I'm safe saying this, but you're almost kind of operating in the gray in a way because nobody has said it's illegal or not illegal. So that's the state stance on this. And so that's why these are allowed to operate in certain municipalities. And if the municipality does not want to see it, they do not approve it.
What is our current stance on indoor amusement?
So indoor amusement is allowed in all light industrial.
So
for
what's,
instance,
we're just defining this one use of that's already allowed.
Yeah, so our indoor amusement includes billiards. It includes bingo halls. It
So this would
includes-
be allowed currently.
No, not necessarily. We still see this as completely differently, only because, again, the state of Texas has not taken a full stance on this. And so there's this gray area that exists out there when it comes to card rooms. Is it illegal? Is it not? And I think that's why we would prefer, no different than event centers. Event centers are indoor amusement, indoor entertainment, right? But event centers, you have all of these special standards that go along with event centers. You can't operate an event center after a certain hour. You have to have a police presence. There's a laundry list. So when it comes to game rooms, or what I should say, card rooms, we feel that SUP is the best way to make sure that the public is engaged and the public understands what's happening, what's being brought to our city. And then on top of that, having those special performance standards, it allows for the city's character to be protected. I think with these card rooms, some of the other things that we put into this ordinance is that we just don't want to see them, we don't want to see them lined up one after another. Like we have distance requirements from schools, from other established card rooms. I mean, there's certain things that if we just said, put it into indoor commercial amusement, they literally could go anywhere that's light industrial in our city. And I think from our perspective, we were like, well, let's just take a more cautious stance on this.
Well, so if this were to be approved, anybody wanting to come in would still have to go through an SUP process. They'd have to go through a full process to be approved. It would never be allowed by right.
Yeah, it would never be
My question
allowed
is,
by
does
right.
the city gain some level of protection by adding this because we are putting rules in place Or, you
No.
know, if we don't have anything, then we're just,
If it's not listed, it's
it's
prohibited.
just prohibited.
It's prohibited,
Yeah.
plain and simple. It is prohibited. So literally, this board could just recommend denial. And this ordinance, it's going to city council as a recommendation of denial. So this ordinance does not move forward. I mean, it's something that we're not in support of, I guess, ultimately. This board would not be in support of, is what we'd be telling council.
So the event center, from the first case that we're talking about, is that what we're talking about that would, if we approve gaming, this is open the door for the event center at the boardwalk. Is that Copa Club? Are we calling it event center and it's really something else?
No, Copa Club,
It's entirely different.
entirely different
Okay.
building, entirely different. Mhm.
Okay.
And they haven't brought Copa Club. They haven't brought that as a part of the PD yet. They really are actually, I think we're also looking to see how this goes. I think the applicant is waiting to see how this goes also. Because if card rooms are prohibited in our city, then card rooms are prohibited in our city. And that's it.
Yeah, you brought up the Copa Club. I'm actually quite confused about it because our understanding is that Westlake does not allow card rooms. But Copa Club is or is planning to be in Westlake. Their website says, as part of their membership solicitation, that it is a card room. But Westlake doesn't think it's a card room.
They may
So-
consider it a private club.
Well, it's still,
very
it is
possible.
all a private club, but still, it is or is not a card room. So is Copa Club planning on exploiting this card room in the entertainment district and then try to move it over to Boardwalk and allow a card room at the Boardwalk?
Yeah,
I'm just trying to look ahead here, and
understood.
it seems kind of obvious that that's where this might be going.
I wonder if in the other municipality you're talking about, it again is depending on how it's defined in their use tables. And so how the municipality is defining that facility may fall under an assumed or approved use, much like he's saying, under indoor entertainment or that sort of thing. And so therefore, this specification of card room is not essentialized in their ordinance.
Well, they said there's no gaming at the location, no gaming of any kind.
You're in Westlake, right? Okay.
So why are y'all I'm not familiar with Copa Club. What's this backstory here?
The Copa Club is listed in this documentation as the tenant of building 3 or 4,
Is that, I missed that, okay.
as the building next to the event center.
Building 3.
Building 3, thank you. As the sole occupant of that building.
Right. But that use, if a poker-related use was proposed for Boardwalk, even if we approved this text amendment, they'd be required to go through a separate zoning process to add it to PD 99.
I'm sorry, Sarah, say that one more time.
Sure.
So I was listening, but like, I was not processing. Say that one more time.
No worries. So this text amendment, if approved as written, would add an SUP option within the entertainment district. Because Mercer is located outside of that area, they would have the option to amend their PD, kind of like they're doing tonight, to add that use. But it would have to go through a separate P&Z and council approval process.
Thank you, sorry.
Other questions for staff about the potential amendment to the CZO use table here? Anything else further?
The only thing that struck me when I looked through this was, you mentioned parking, but in your staff presentation had photos of the inside of card rooms, and I've never been to one. But they looked really crowded and dense, like way more densely packed than a restaurant would be. So the question in my mind was, why would the parking requirement for a card room be any less than that for a restaurant, when by all appearances, they're much more densely populated than
Yeah.
a restaurant?
I think, Sarah, can you bring that table up real quick? I'm curious. I'm trying to remember when and I'm thinking of our,
This one?
how we've set up, as far as for do go up a little bit. There should be something that breaks down I thought we had a breakdown for the actual number of parking spaces.
This one.
Yeah, so in our table, like our current CZO for restaurant, bar, tavern, private club, banquet hall, event center, it's all 1 to 400. Even a restaurant is 1 to 400 in our city. So that's our base parking ratio requirement. We figured that would spill over to, if this use was to get approved, we would just keep it at the 1 to 400. But not to say that we couldn't get more stringent on that, and it'd be more of a 1 to 250. Now, again, certain PDs have done that. Certain plan develops. Our general CZO doesn't. Our general CZO keeps it at a 1 to 400, even for restaurants. So we were just keeping consistent. I guess if anything, if we were being flexible, we might have been a little bit more flexible with that than anything else. Yeah.
And I wonder too, the photographs may have been from tourneys or other special events.
Like I said, I've
so
never
we
been to
don't-
one.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, understood.
I'm just saying, in terms of evidence, I don't know that that's indicative of a standard use or not. It very well could be either way.
Right.
Other thoughts, questions? Okay, well, with that, we will return back to item A2, discuss agenda items for future Planning and Zoning Commission consideration. Commissioners, items. I would just like to ask, I know we did have potentially some folks who attended the ULI training. And before it gets too distant in their minds, if we have extra time in a study session, I would love to hear from, those commissioners so that we can all benefit from that training experience potentially. So, and that also then hopefully doesn't put them on the spot today or anything like that. They have some time to consider, in terms of what might be meaningful to share from that experience at our next study session, if they're so amenable.
Unfortunately, I was not able to attend. I had a conflict come up with work.
Sorry about that. Okay,
And I couldn't make it either. I had a family issue.
okay.
It was during the week. It was Wednesday. It was.
It was a Wednesday, yeah. Okay, well then that does that, so we can, it sounds
no
like we don't
problem.
need that item,
Not a
but,
problem. Not a problem. Not a problem.
Okay, any other items potentially? Okay.
Chris, you were looking at me like I am supposed to suggest something.
No. No.
was like-
No.
Did I miss an email?
We talked a lot about parking. Do we need a parking study or something extra?
Oh,
to-
for card rooms?
No, not for
Just-
card
just in
rooms,
general?
just in general.
Just in general.
For it sounds like there's a lot of issues that, in my neighborhood, I don't have a lot of parking issues, but it sounds like there are issues in other parts of the city.
Mhm.
I'm curious if,
Yeah, from what I understand, again, I wasn't working here at the time, but I know parking was visited 2021, right, Sarah? So 2021, they brought the entire table and they re-looked at parking, but it's 2024.
it sounds like it wasn't
So,
adequate.
No.
I mean,
I,
maybe that was because of COVID.
It was a trend,
Maybe that
yeah,
was.
yeah. So what I would say, having been here during that and seen some of that, is that there was intentionality around that parking code, to my understanding, that also took into account many of the things that we heard from our colleague Dallas when we were doing the tour around adaptive reuse and the ways that parking minimums can sometimes unintentionally hamper there being redevelopment at all. So it can kind of be a,
Mine's not, my concern's not so much on retail, restaurant, it's more surrounding this apartment issue.
Okay.
And if we're potentially looking at new developments of apartments, is the number of spots that we're slotting for apartments currently adequate?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
and I think to your point, and I can pull up, there's a book I'm reading presently that's called Paved Paradise, How Parking Plans the City. There's also a couple of works by Donald Shoup, who's an expert in parking in urban planning. My understanding and reading of those texts, again, and in alignment with current transportation planning thinking, is that the issues that you're seeing there are likely more driven economically, much as you were saying, by the housing cost itself, with the occupancy, combined with, as you so rightly said, the over-reliance on automobiles as the only source of transportation.
Unfortunately, that's not going to change quick enough to solve the parking issue, the over-reliance on vehicles. And we would need significantly more apartments to drive down the cost of those units as well. So if we're looking at approving new ones, are we creating an issue where we're still going to see 3 and 4 people filling a 1-bedroom apartment and run into a parking issue in the foreseeable future, decade or more?
Yeah.
I would agree, that needs to be addressed, because the management either may not know about it or may not care.
Well, they have, I would hope that they have a limit on the number of occupants per room, but as I know some of my, I used to live in an apartment as well, in a study. So, when you're coming up, you cut corners.
Yeah.
Now-
And I think that your points are well taken. I just wanted to stress that it's not actually the only inflection point to change the scenario that we're seeing. So in terms of how we're leveraging and changing things, even if we did alter the parking, it may not actually still produce the result you're looking for because of the other pressures from these other areas.
Just a suggestion, is there something you think would target what we're trying to?
Well, when we looked at this before, I mean, the trend was the U.S. was dramatically overparked. Like, there's way too many parking places in the United States. We built it, so that everybody could drive a car and always have a parking place, and so we built these huge lots. And so the modern sort of idea is like, let's not overpark, let's go with more of a market-based philosophy, kind of trust the developers a little bit. Because again, we've sort of alluded to that before, where we're trying to look out for the developers, but they have their own best interests. So I would say I agree that I think we should look at this, but also just sort of make sure we look at it holistically like that, what kind of the current trends are.
Agreed. And I would say that tends to be, as you said, that the trend is in really to produce a massive change. It's really a cultural change of the concept of free parking, right, it is not necessarily entrenched in our Constitution. And so that is likely some of the way that things change or move. But as you've said, those things change very slowly. But I think we have seen with some of the newer ride-hailing or shared technologies, or even I would say for myself in the city of Farmers Branch, I routinely use the DART GoLink service. And the reason I do is because I can travel point to point anywhere in Farmers Branch for the cost of a DART ticket. And I get basically the same service as Uber or Lyft, except it's a driver who has passed a background check and has gone through the DART training. And we have this service in Farmers Branch. It is quite affordable. And my argument would be if there was, again, to your point, some challenges with the parking or different, avenues to get where you're going, and those were made easier, smoother. Like, we're human beings. We do what's easy.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, living in a house far removed from the apartment overflow, I don't see it. I'm just trying to address the concerns that have been raised.
Well, even if occasionally those things meet people's needs, there's no way you can get by in Texas without a car. And if you live in an apartment, you got to park your car someplace when you go to bed.
I think it is possible in Texas. I did live 6 years in Houston without a car.
and I also lived 10 years in Atlanta without a car.
Most people choose not to do that.
But I think
That's an
it's-
anomaly.
But I think
not
it's
the average.
Yeah, I will agree that it's not typical, but I would say it's not impossible. Just stating my factual experience of that. But I will say that I only lasted 6 months in Dallas and DFW. So to your point, it was much harder in this region, and so I think there is opportunities for improvement, both in parking, as you said, and really also in our streetscape and our maintenance, making, like you said, the parking, walking from those apartments to a place, it's a mile, and you said that like it was a massive distance, right? But
That's the
it's,
distance, but when it's 105 degrees,
yes, but if you have
Not doing
street
it.
trees and shade and it's a pleasant walk, then a mile doesn't feel the same.
right?
So there are other
I'm
ways.
still not going to do it.
One other question with respect to the high density of living in these apartments. Is there a fire code issue that is potentially brought out by, I mean, is there no limit under fire code as to how many people can live in each apartment?
As far as living in each unit?
Yes.
There is a limit in the residential area for sure.
Yeah, I'm sure there's, I mean, again, one of those things of, from a code perspective and monitoring something like that, it ends up becoming, obviously the apartments, they should be monitoring this, obviously. I think we look at it more from, I thought you were talking about number of units that are allowed
No, the number
that
of people
can-
residing in each unit.
in each unit. Yeah.
At some point, does it become a safety issue for everybody in the
Oh,
building?
I'm sure. I'm sure.
And how does the city look at that?
We can look at that and see. I don't know if I have a good answer for you right now on that. But we can definitely look. I can check with our fire.
Yeah, I don't have an
department.
answer either. I'm just,
Yeah.
just asking questions.
It's your
Yeah.
agenda item.
Right.
That's, yeah.
Isn't that topic
I'm
at
assuming
hand right
20
now?
people can't be in one unit. But yeah, no, absolutely. Well, we could definitely look at that too. Again, I think that would be coming more from code and our fire
That's
department as
exactly
well.
what I was
Absolutely.
Great, thank you for that excellent discussion.
What was the name of the parking book?
One is called Paved Paradise. And the second one is a recommendation of an author who is probably the preeminent parking scholar in North America, and his name is Donald Shoup. And these are people that have researched this as their livelihood. So they have a lot more data and information and background than I do. I have read many of their papers and works, but I can't claim to cite them all
Have any of their
comprehensively.
papers come out past COVID?
There have been some revisions, and this Paved Paradise is pretty new. So it does have considerations around, potential differences with increased work from home, less office usage, et cetera.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
And one thing to note also is the active transportation plan. That's happening next Wednesday. They're having a public hearing on that. Time and location, I don't have that at this moment,
I do.
but you
Yeah.
do have
I
that.
was going to say,
Great.
you posted it, didn't you?
Even
Yeah, I
better.
did post that.
That's at the
Rec Center.
Rec Center.
Time-wise, we are looking at that right now. It's in the Pecan Room at 6 p.m.
Thank you for bringing that up, because it's highly relevant to this parking discussion as well.
Absolutely.
There's also on the flyer announcing it, a QR code, which links you to a transportation survey. They're asking people to.
Great. If we could have staff send that out to the commissioners, that would be great.
Absolutely.
All right, other thoughts?
So are we adding any of these items to future agendas, or are we gonna table it? I mean, Amber, I know we kind of had a back and forth about the parking, if it was needed, if it isn't. The question I have is, are we going to do something or no?
I mean, we can always act, I mean, as staff, we will act on that. We'll bring you something. I'm not sure if it'll be as quick of a turnaround as the next meeting that we have, but absolutely, I mean, we'll look into it and come up with maybe some talking points just to get a little bit more, just to make sure we're going in the right direction.
I just wanted to know what to expect after the
Right.
discussion.
Understood.
Thanks for clarifying. And I think that 2021 update, it could be just helpful for the members of the commission to know, what happened and why.
Absolutely.
And that would maybe help set the stage for any further
Yeah, that'd be
discussion on
perfect.
that.
We could do that. We could just give like a brief history background on where we were, why we are at where we're at now.
Yes.
So that's no problem.
Thank you.
Sure, absolutely.
Great. Well, with that, we will conclude our study session. It is 7:00 and we're scheduled to pick up at 7, but certainly if you need a bio break, do that and we will reconvene there shortly. Good evening and welcome to the City of Farmers Branch Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. It is presently 7:09 PM, Monday, April 8th, 2024. I'd like to begin by thanking the commissioners for their service. The first item on our agenda this evening is citizen comments. This agenda item provides an opportunity for citizens to address the Planning and Zoning Commission on any matter that is not posted on the agenda. Anyone wishing to address the commission should complete a citizen's comments registration form and submit it to the chair prior to the start of the meeting. There is a 3-minute time limit for each citizen to speak, with a reasonable limitation on speakers on any one topic or item, with a maximum of 15 total minutes on the same topic item. Anyone wishing to speak shall be courteous and cordial. The Planning and Zoning Commission is not permitted to take action on any subject raised by a speaker during citizen comments. However, the Planning and Zoning Commission may have the item placed on a future agenda for action, refer the item to the Director of Planning for further study or action, and or briefly state existing city policy, or provide a brief statement of factual information in response to the inquiry. I have a number of citizen comments forms. However, it appears that all of them are in dealing with items on our agenda, which are public hearings. So we will hear those during those public hearing sessions, just to be clear that I have received those. And if you still need to submit a form, there are forms available in the back, so you can still submit those and bring those forward.
The only agenda that's available is from the council meeting. We have nothing that tells us the numbers, what we need to put on the forms or anything else.
Well,
Those weren't distributed, so we don't know those.
I apologize. The agenda has been publicly posted, so thank you for bringing that to our attention, that copies were not made available for this night's meeting. I'm sure staff apologizes for that oversight. And just to let you know, we do have 2 public hearings this evening. I will announce them. And certainly if you would like to add those agenda items or references on the form, or if you just state the issue of your concern, I'm sure we can ensure that it's heard under the right agenda item. Thank you for that. Up next, we will hear first item C1, consider approval of the March 25th, 2024 Planning and Zoning Commission minutes and take appropriate action. Commissioners, I know we did have one edit in study session.
Yes, with the one minor correction, I move that we approve the minutes.
Thank you.
I second.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the topic? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor? All right, thank you kindly. Next, we will have a public hearing. Just to let y'all know, we'll hear first from staff and the applicant, and then you can wait. I'll open the public hearing, and then we'll go through any of these comment forms. Up first, public hearing item D1, conduct a public hearing and consider the request for a zoning amendment for mixed-use development on approximately 10.18 acres located at 1960 LBJ Freeway, and take appropriate action. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The applicant, Chris Zelke, is requesting to amend PD 99 for an existing development known as Mercer Boardwalk. This is located on 10-plus acres of land just south of LBJ near Luna Road. Phase 1 includes the construction of buildings 3, 4, and 5, which currently exist on site. And the developer now proposes to modify plans for the second phase. The proposal includes Building 1 as a new pickleball complex with 12 outdoor courts and an indoor bar and restaurant. Building 2 will be an indoor event center for private and corporate events. This does trigger the uses that are allowed in PD 99. The applicant is asking to add event center and outdoor commercial amusement as an allowed use, as it's not permitted at this moment. Building 6 will also include office, retail, and restaurant space. The applicant also proposes to install a 50-foot tall LED sign that's adjacent to LBJ Freeway. The current PD does prohibit electronic signage, therefore an amendment is needed for this sign. A few other deviations from PD 99 are being requested, including some special exceptions that are being carried over from the previous approved detail site plan. All 393 parking spaces were constructed back when they did Phase 1, and that was for all 6 buildings. But the original uses never included event center or outdoor amusement. So PD 99 allows a parking plan to be submitted, showing how the development will accommodate the demand for parking. This parking analysis was formulated, the one that you have in your packet, that was formulated on a preliminary version of the site plan. The final square footages and the final uses were recalculated by the developer, and that was also provided as a separate document within your packet. Both documents, again, provided in the packet. Their findings do show that a total of 419 parking spaces are needed. As you can see on this table here, that's a deficit of about 26 spaces. On a separate note, the city has updated our parking ratios. We did that back in 2001, which actually reduced the parking requirements for many uses within our city. So if our CZO was being used to calculate this parking, this site would only require a minimum of 175 spaces. Again, the applicant is looking to use the 393 spaces that currently exist. So PD 99 also requires that each facade have a Texas Tudor design element. The exteriors of all proposed buildings consist of brick, stone veneer, precast stone, and each building elevation exceeds the minimum standards. What you see on the screen right now are the elevations for the pickleball. These are the elevations for the event center. And this is Building 6. Again, this is the elevation that will contain offices and a restaurant. A 50-foot tall sign along the northern boundary of this property is to promote visibility from the LBJ freeway. This is a double-sided LED message board, approximately 435 square feet in size, with 6 tenant spaces also included. Advertising on this sign is going to be limited to businesses and events that are only located within the Mercer Boardwalk property. The sign will still follow Section 62 of the Code of Ordinance, outlining the additional requirements for electronic message signs. Based on our 2045 plan, the proposed development is consistent with the recommendations of the comprehensive plan. On March 28th, 13 notification letters were mailed to surrounding property owners. Zoning sign was also installed on the site, and of the writing of this report, no written correspondence has been received by the city. I will continue to stand for questions. The applicant is here also to answer questions as well.
Commissioners, question?
Can you bring up the site plan? So I know the conversation, certainly in study session, was about the amount of parking. And the property to the west, that is owned by the applicant, correct? There's like a field on the west side there, where the parking lot ends. Is that field also owned by the applicant?
I'll want to check with the applicant on that. I'm not 100% sure. I believe that does belong to the applicant.
The one that's over that way, no, that's
He'd be talking this location right here.
Somewhere right in there, yeah.
over here. That
Yep.
is just, it is owned, but that is a green space, flood zone, floodway.
Okay.
So it cannot be used for anything else.
Can't be used, so it couldn't be used for, like, not for paved parking, but is there any hybrid use where you could sort of have an overflow where it's gravel or something? Because it's really most of the time, right? We're always thinking about overflow, like something's happening at the event center, something's happening everywhere. Is there enough to manage everybody? And, so that concept of overflow, where does that overflow go? And so that's the question. I just didn't know if there's any flexibility for creating some kind of an overflow when that is needed.
I can let the applicant come up and
Yeah, if
speak
you
to
wanna.
that.
Okay.
And if you would, just state your name and address for the record.
And I promised I wouldn't be back, but here I am. Michael Beatty, 4110 Riverwalk Drive. I've been here many, many times for this project over the last 8 years. The area, let's see if I can get a mouse up. Here we go. This area here is FEMA floodplain, 100-year flood. It's a backflow coming out of the Farmers Branch Creek itself. But we could do overflow parking here. Previously, we were instructed not to with the initial submittals, but technically it's something we could do with the understanding that, the creek will come up there and it will get wet. It's kind of like where you see public parks that are down in the, I can't remember the name of it now, right off of Valley View, that parking area down there, that gets wet, same thing. So we could definitely do that. It'll probably fit 40 to 50 spaces. The multifamily land's traded hands a couple of times, but there's also an opportunity to work with them in the future to do some sort of shared parking easement, swap some of their spaces because they're not always in demand the same time that we would be. But yes, that you can put parking there with the understanding that it does get wet. Much actually our trail does too.
Sorry, what was the last thing you said?
Beatty, B-E-A-T-Y, Michael.
And just to pick up, so if I heard you correctly, you mentioned potential or openness to a shared parking easement with some of the multifamily?
With the company that purchased that initially from Mr. Moyetti, had a very strong relationship. That's discussions that we've had. I think they've sold the property, but I'm sure at some point, because we share this whole property line here, and some of the parking is already cross-access. And there's platted easements that we filed with our plat in phase 1. But this space we could access pretty easily for temporary overflow parking if needed. There have been discussions about off-site valets too, to get back to the offices that would be vacant at night if we really, really had an issue, or if there was a big event at Bugatti's. You just run a valet, and then the valet has a buggy service for the people that are actually driving the cars.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions for staff or our applicant? We might go back to staff for a minute if need be.
Yeah, can you zoom out, or can I see what's on this east side? Like, how far over does the boardwalk property go to the east? And where does it meet in with the future development?
Let me see if I have a larger image. It basically follows this line here. Were you wanting to see further to the east?
No, that helps. So at the end of that concrete, is there any kind of neutral easement in there, or does it immediately jump to the future apartment property?
Right. It turns directly into the future multifamily development property, but I do believe that there should be shared access and shared parking with the multifamily to the other side, I believe. So, yeah, if that gets constructed, there should be some sort of sharing. At least I believe that's how the PD is even structured. But I'll let.
The fire lanes are platted for common access now. Our parking counts have always been based on the concrete that's poured today. And with the current owner or potential future owner of the land that actually develops, that's something that we would want to work out with them. We do not have a written agreement specifically outlining a number of shared spaces between the two facilities, but it's a natural marriage, and the access easements are in place.
Could there be access between that multifamily and the parking lot? Like, would you be able to drive from one parking lot to the other?
They connect. Oops, I'm sorry, I'm stealing somebody's presentation, but I thought I saw it. This one. That parking was already planned, and there's 2 rows past that. They have a building setback requirement that was filled with parking, and then our fire lane comes through here, terminates. They pick up the fire lane here, and they pick up the fire lane here along 635.
Okay, so they are open You can drive from one.
Yes, we
property
have
to
to
the
have the fire life safety access. We provide, it's our fire lane here that actually provides them access down to the water. The site plan that we had done several years ago, this was the key amenity area for the apartments, so.
Okay. And then
And-
one last question. For the event center, do we have a maximum occupancy? And also the same thing for the pickleball. Do you have at least a guesstimate?
There are maximum occupancies based on the fire code. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head. I
I
haven't-
would say from the
If you wouldn't mind, go ahead and
Yeah.
come to the mic, state your name and address.
Christopher Zilke, 4100 Riverwalk Drive. We're thinking 400 people. Obviously, we think that fire department would allow more, but we believe this is 400 people. This is really space for seated dinners. There will be big round tables. This is not an event center with a big stage for concerts. So it is more of seated dinners, weddings, business corporate dinners. So we don't see it exceeding 400 people at the maximum.
Okay. And do you know what the occupancy max would be for the pickleball location?
Yeah, the pickleball court itself, the building that's with it is very small. In the study, you brought up Chicken Pickle. They have a huge building. The building itself is only 3,000 square feet. So it's a very small building. We planned that on purpose to solve this parking issue. Both the fact that pickleball would mostly be used during the day, early evening, and event center kind of at night mostly. But the original building that was there was a 10,000 square foot building. The pickleball courts allowed us to use that space because it does go over in the floodplain with something that is, we feel, an amenity to the city. And does not have the occupancy needs of a 10,000 square foot, restaurant, bar, or retail. So with the building itself, what we are trying to do is create something that will feed the other businesses, and people can play pickleball and then go eat at one of the other venues without creating a huge crowd.
All right. So what is I'm sorry, did you say the number? What was the approximate occupancy?
Occupancy, probably 160,
And that includes the pickleball courts?
including some pickleball courts, yeah.
Further questions, commissioners?
Question for staff? Sorry, same issue, parking. If parking becomes tight, a foreseeable event might be people trying to park on the freeway access road, which could be hazardous. It's unlit, dark. Is parking legal there? Can it be prohibited? Can signs be put up notifying people of such a prohibition?
Absolutely. I mean, it's TxDOT's right of way, but it is illegal. Like, nobody can park along the rights of way, especially the frontage roads. So that usually means calling a police officer or calling somebody to, notify and let them know that someone's out of compliance. But again, it is TxDOT's right of way.
Okay. Is this something the city could put up just to let people know that it's not legal?
We would need to work with TxDOT.
Okay.
In order to put any type of signage
Okay.
on their right of way.
All
Absolutely.
right, thanks.
And, just for clarification also, and maybe the applicant will need to clarify this also, but Building 1, I think there's a little bit of discrepancy. We're trying to figure out if Building 1, our understanding is Building 1 is 2 stories. Is that correct? It's 2 stories, but, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's 2 stories, but and I didn't bring the actual plan drawings, but the second floor is really just a rooftop patio. So it's got a deck, I think it's like 700 square feet upstairs.
Okay, and that's it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So then it is closer on the 3,000 square foot. And then when you were talking, one of the commissioners had also asked about max occupancy. So with a 10,000 square foot building, normally, again, we've reached out to our, the folks that work in our building department. 10,000 square feet divided by 7, so the max occupancy for something that's 10,000 square feet looks like it'd be about 1,428. That's assuming there are no kitchen. I mean, it's like that's putting all the people in, that's like no walls. That's the max that you can have if there's no walls and it's just one big building. But odds are you're going to have restrooms, you're going to have kitchen, you're going to have all these different areas that change that. And ultimately, it really is the fire marshal that makes that determination at the end.
So with walls, bathrooms, kitchens, is there a probability that there could be 700 people?
We've never seen a floor plan. It just depends on when the floor plan comes in. They make the determination at that moment. I think from our perspective right now, we're really looking at it from obviously the building facade, number of parking spaces. And again, going back to the fact that event centers are not defined in PD 99, they are defined in our CZO. And the PD pushes us back to the CZO. That's what makes it very complicated, because now I'm at a 1 to 400. Yeah, one space per 400 is the most I can do. Again, this is a PD. So if we feel that 1 to 400 is not, it shouldn't apply, and it needs to be more stringent, now's the time to apply that more stringency, make that recommendation.
Commissioners, further questions for staff or our
And
applicant?
I guess I just, yeah, I mean, I think it's, go to Dallas, where it's obviously more dense. Valet parking is often the solution for these kind of things.
Right.
Is there, I don't know if there's any way to put a trigger in, I mean, that you would have to do valet, like if there were going to be a certain, an event that was going to be over a certain size or something that and that may just be a little bit too nebulous now to define, but, because that does end up being the solution that is often used in this situation, is to provide valet parking.
Right. It's a little difficult to apply a requirement like that, at least from a code enforcement standpoint. It'd be hard to enforce. But again, it's a plan development, so
Right.
any condition really could be added. It's just a matter of, is it something that is feasible to regulate and to actually monitor?
Right. And then the idea of putting the semi-developed overflow parking on the east end sounded like the applicant, that we or the city at some point said, we don't want you to do that.
Mhm.
Is that still our position? I mean, is there some flexibility to opening that up to create some overflow?
Right. I would probably definitely want to involve our Public Works Department in that. But, my understanding, again, when you start dealing with floodplain, especially floodway, but even floodplain, if you're going to tap into the floodplain area, you have to offset it somewhere else. So that floodplain is meant for water to go for the 100-year event, 500-year event.
Right.
If that gets taken away, or if that gets altered or shifted, it has to be shifted and altered somewhere else.
So we can't assume that as part of the solution at this point?
It could be. It's just anything can be engineered, obviously. But, it's a matter of cost, and that's something if the applicant is open to doing that, absolutely. People build in the floodway all the time. It just may be more expensive to do, for the most part.
One question I had, this is going back to the signage. I think you had specified that currently the way that the language is written is that the sign information that would be there would only be pertaining to the tenants in that area.
Absolutely.
Could there also potentially be an allowance for the city itself, the City of Farmers Branch, to be able to utilize the signage for appropriate, citizen information purposes?
If something like that was probably written into the plan development, that might be a different story. I know our general rules and regulations state no off-site advertising. So that's really where we get back to the fact of everything that is advertised on this sign can only advertise for what's happening on that site. But again, with a plan development, I don't have somebody from legal here, but again, if that advertising wanted to go beyond, that's where an ordinance would need to come into play. And if the ordinance allows for it, it's not going to allow for it citywide.
Right.
But if it's specific to just this one location, something like that could be written into an ordinance.
Thank you. I only bring it up because I sometimes hear from citizens, especially on our west side, that want more information from the city about events happening or that sort of thing. And so
Understood.
it occurred to me that this could be one site for that sort of thing. Commissioners, other questions for staff or our applicant? Okay. Thank you for that. Seeing none, we'll move, this is a public hearing, so I will move to open the public hearing. I don't see that any of my citizen comment cards are for item D1. If I've seen that in error, if there is anyone wishing to speak on item D1, or I didn't get your form, I'm not seeing anyone there. Okay, just wanted to ensure. So, Commissioners, just a reminder, we have opened the public hearing, so we'll hear a motion on that, assuming no further discussion during the public hearing.
I make a motion to close the public hearing.
Thank you.
Second.
All right. Any further discussion on the matter? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor to close the public hearing? All right, that carries. And so with that, then we will entertain an action on this item. It is a request for a zoning amendment.
Right. I mean, at this point, it doesn't seem like we've really defined any stipulations yet, have we? They're sort of nebulous. I mean, there's some ideas on the table.
That's the way that I'm hearing it. I'm not seeing anything that has risen to the level of being codified. So if there is a stipulation or addendum to this zoning amendment as it currently stands, I think we would need to clearly specify that.
Okay. Well, I mean, I will make a motion to approve the request to add this to the table of uses.
Okay, we have a request, yeah, it's a request for a zoning amendment.
Zoning amendment.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
I'll second it.
Okay. Any further discussion on the item? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor? All right, all opposed? All right, thank you. And this will go to City Council
Should be May 7th.
May 7th. Thank you for that. All right. Next item, D2, conduct a public hearing and consider the request to amend the comprehensive zoning ordinance to define card room as a use within the city and adopting regulations applicable to such use, including but not limited to amending Article 2, zoning districts and uses, Article 4, site development standards, Article 5, special districts, Article 7, definitions, and take appropriate action.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our city did receive a request to amend the use table after it was determined that this particular use was not listed. It was considered a new use. So this request was for a card room. The zoning ordinance outlines our process by adding or for adding a new or unlisted use to our table. Typically, we need to consider the nature of the use, its compatibility within all of our zoning districts, how we would classify it, and if the use is by right or if it requires a specific use permit, which is an SUP. Card rooms are essentially where poker games are played for stakes or rewards. Cash games, tournaments are hosted with various buy-ins, all within the boundaries of state gambling laws. These venues do not exist in our city, but they do exist in the DFW area and as well as other cities. So I did want to state something about the Texas Penal Code, specifically Section 47. This is what outlines the state's gambling laws and includes a affirmative defense to persecution if gambling occurs in a private place where no economic benefit is being received other than personal winnings and where the risk and chance of winning are equal for all participants. A private place by state law is defined as inaccessible to the public. To comply with these regulations, these card rooms typically operate as membership clubs or private venues. Staff did conduct some research on nearby cities to determine how other card rooms are classified, what's permitted, what's not. On our east side here in Farmers Branch, the Entertainment Overlay District, known as the EOD, might be the most suitable. The intent of the EOD was to allow for destination venues, promoting a vibrant, active area for socializing, entertaining. This district would also encourage economic development. That was the whole point of the EOD. This is all through infill, redevelopment, underutilized properties, or adaptive reuse of existing buildings. So if card rooms were permitted within the EOD, staff would recommend an SUP, specific use permit, also be required. Requiring an SUP ensures the proposed development aligns with the city's goals and regulations. This provides the opportunity for the city to evaluate various factors such as traffic, parking, any impacts that come with that particular use. And most importantly, you have public engagement. So the public is always invited during the application process. Staff would set the minimum parking ratio of 1 space per 400 square feet of floor area. And depending on the size of the venue, a TIA, which is a traffic impact analysis, could and would be required. Staff would also introduce special performance standards. Special performance standards, it helps the city regulate land use to achieve a desired outcome. It adds safety. It preserves community character. I can run through some of these real quick just for the record. What we're stating here is that card rooms must be held in a private venue. No one can be paid for running the games except for the players that get paid from their winnings. No house bank. Dealers and staff cannot be paid with gambling currency. Games must not favor a house or any player. Card rooms cannot be near schools or other established card rooms. If a card room shuts down, changes its name, its ownership, a new SUP is going to be required. City officials have the right to always inspect for site compliance. Refusing access obviously can lead to permit cancellation. And on top of that, if something like this were to get approved and allowed within the EOD, we would have to, or we would, we would recommend that a card room operation permit also be required. And something like that would require that that applicant would need to reapply on an annual basis for that permit. So the 2045 plan designates that the industrial area on the east side will largely remain industrial. It's been industrial for a long time. But the EOD aims to promote a lively, engaging the east side, offering residents and employees opportunities to socialize and entertain. Again, that's the point of the EOD. This public hearing was posted in the Dallas Morning News. That was on March 29th. In addition, we did send out 952 notification letters were mailed to all property owners within the EOD and 200 feet outside the EOD area. Several zoning signs were placed within the EOD area, and as the writing of this report, we have not physically received any written responses. We have received a few phone calls, just trying to understand more about it, but we have not received anything physically by mail regarding this item. So staff has drafted an ordinance for this board to review and for council to look at, and if they opt to include card rooms, we would do so with this particular ordinance, or that's what we would support. So with that, I can continue to stand for questions. The applicant, we don't have an applicant here. The person who originally asked for this, they are present. But again, the focus of this request is really to talk about if card rooms are something that we can add to our use table at this time.
Thank you. Commissioners?
I have a question, Marcus. In this new economic development entertainment district, are there any other current venues in this area? Is this the first, second, third?
Right. So within that area, we do have some restaurants that have opened up. We've got some coffee shops. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think we have some apartments in this area also, because I think Alpha and Welch fall within this location. Entertainment-wise, I do know that there's a pickleball venue on the east side. I'm not sure if that falls within the entertainment district or not. The entertainment district really runs from, I believe it's Valley View, pretty close down to I believe it's Spring Valley down to Simonton, yeah, on the south side.
Simonton's the last street, I think.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a jog. So where Midway and McEwen meet, part of McEwen is in it, part of McEwen's out.
Well, the gist of my question was, are there other entertainment venues in the immediate area close to this? Because my recollection is this was a furniture store at one time. And we talked about this just briefly in study session about this being an industrial type area. You know, we have over-the-road tractor trailers in the area. We have city delivery box truck situations, and now we're looking at what I think is a first in this particular block area. And you mentioned something about traffic analysis. I'm a little bit concerned about how this mix of traffic, since there's no other operation similar to this in the area, that tells me there's probably no police control out there. And I'm thinking about traffic and what this could cause, because it's the first of its kind on this particular street, in this particular building, in this industrial area. So can you kind of address that or what the thought process may be?
Right. So again, the applicant, they have not submitted an application yet, but I do know which building you're speaking of. And yes, you're right. It was formerly a furniture store. So the parking layout, the use of the building, completely different than what these folks would be asking for if something like this were to get allowed and permitted. The EOD, again, is meant to create this type of change. You know, when they created that EOD district, not to say that there are not any bars or restaurants, there are. They're starting to open up in the EOD area. Probably not as quick as we would like, but they're happening. You know, again, the EOD area is meant for that entertainment. So I think that's where some flexibility is going to be looked at when these types of, not this particular use, but when the entertainment type uses come to this area. You know, we want to take that under consideration as far as if they're going to be under part, they're going to need special permission to be under part. And you're right, there's box trucks, there's semi-truck. I mean, at one point, this city decided that the EOD was going to be on the east side, and that's where they created the boundary. So the idea of mixing truck traffic with regular cars, I think the idea is really to try to shift away from that industrial look or that industrial feel and move more into, again, more entertainment for the citizens and for people to socialize. That's really the intent. So when it comes to parking, you know, I come from two schools of thoughts. We have the CZO, we have whatever our base parking requires, but for these uses, I think the idea is that in order to get that entertainment in there, some flexibility is probably going to be asked for from developers or from folks that are wanting to moving their business in there for entertainment purposes. So, you know, it's one of those things where the district is already there. You know, and so I think the thought of mixing that type of traffic was probably taken into account whenever they created that district.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Further questions for staff?
You may have mentioned it, but I just wanted to be clear on the Texas Penal Code. You mentioned how they're being structured to deal with these, but the state of Texas has not ruled on this at all, correct? This is a gray area at this point, as far as legally, right?
Yeah, my understanding again is that they haven't said.
They
Like,
haven't
no-
said,
no
there's
one said.
not, one way or the other, there's been no ruling.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
In terms of the type of gambling that goes on in these places, since the state has no supervision of it, I guess that means there's no limit to the stakes. The stakes could be, they could be $2 ante or $10,000 ante or more, right?
I believe that's correct. I believe that is correct. there is no limitation to any of that.
That does bring up another, because in Las Vegas, you have a gaming commission that puts in some pretty stringent requirements about training and making sure that everything that happens in the facility is done fairly and above board. And so this being sort of a gray area, I guess there would be no regulation at all as far as the operation of the card room.
Correct. Yeah, that's correct.
Another question, comment. Marcus, during the study session, you mentioned the current litigation between some operators in the city of Dallas and the city of Dallas for the benefit of the citizens tonight. Could you kind of briefly give a background of that and talk about that? And I realize you don't know all the details, but I just wanted to make people aware that there is currently some other litigation going on in the area with regard to these card rooms.
Sure. And do you want to give a briefing on that real quick? Yeah. Sarah did some excellent background work on this, so I'm going to let her touch on this item.
Sure. Sarah Bergman, lead planner. A quick summary would be there are 2 existing card rooms in the city of Dallas that were originally permitted as commercial amusement indoor. After those COs were initially issued, Dallas kind of reversed interpretation and opted to revoke those COs, saying that they were not actually commercial amusement use. That's led to a series of the applicants appealed. It went to their zoning board of adjustment. That decision was appealed to district court, and so some of those lawsuits are ongoing. But recently in 2023, the council directed staff to start looking at a new land use category specifically for card rooms. And so that is in progress right now as a text amendment. Dallas is proposing that card rooms be limited to accessory to a different type of entertainment use, axe throwing, something along those lines. And so that proposal is actually going through the process right now. It has not gone to city council for final approval.
Thank you, Sarah.
Sure.
Commissioners, other questions for staff?
What are the exact boundaries of this overlay?
Let's see. Oh, do we? We're going to pull that up. So you'll see Simonton to the south, Galleria also to the south. It does this. Let me turn this off. Okay. Sorry, we've never opened Adobe on this apparently. Spring Valley to the north, Inwood to the east, and then Midway to the west.
Could you put that cursor on the subject building?
Right. Well, again, that's really not, that location isn't under topic tonight.
I know, but I'm thinking about because I know it's on Alpha, and I'm thinking about, it's a thoroughfare. Isn't it on Alpha?
Let's see if I can find it on here. Further south. Oh, here it is right here.
Yeah. And again, that facility and that location, it's a main artery that goes to that industrial park, and that's what originally concerned me about the existing truck traffic, the existing operations, and the particular location of that building. I'm thinking that it'd be nicer, for example, if that building was on the edge of the entertainment district somewhere where it had a little bit more parking and wouldn't be as exposed to the heavy traffic going in and out of that industrial park. Just a thought.
Understood.
Go ahead.
One other thing, given the unregulated nature of this gambling, is there anything that would prohibit minors from gambling in such an establishment?
That would prohibit minors from gambling?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, they would not be permitted to
By whom?
gamble.
By I don't see anything in the ordinance.
And I'm not sure if state law touches on that or not, but if that's something that we need to add into the ordinance, we're more than happy to add 21 and up or something to that effect.
If it were to go through, I would strongly suggest
Sure.
that no one under 21 be permitted in such a building.
Other thoughts?
Oh, go ahead.
You mentioned that Dallas was considering withdrawing their certificate of occupancy. Do you have any background on why? What caused them to re-examine their granting that?
Do you have background on that?
Our understanding, just from research from their case documents, is that the determination was made by the building official after these rooms started operating, that they fell outside of the commercial amusement definition that the city of Dallas has adopted. And they see this sort of similarly to Farmers Branch, where this is a separate use that needs its own definition and standards. So that's the process that is in place, or that is going through right now.
Yeah, Marcos, so just clarification. So I know you've sort of mentioned a building specific, but we are not looking at a specific building, a specific application?
No,
Like
sir.
I didn't see anything in any paperwork that indicated an address
No,
of
sir.
any kind?
No,
We're
this
just
is-
looking at whether this goes into the table and not looking at a specific instance.
Yeah, our stance on this is that if this was to get approved, that it would be limited again. If we're going to see it in the entertainment district, if it was to get approved. And no, there's not a specific location that we're looking at. This is something that affects the city, citywide. Because once we add it into a use table, it is now defined in our use table. At this moment right now, if something isn't defined, it's prohibited.
And then also a clarification on that. If it is approved, every single location would have to come to P and Z, would have to come to the city for an approval.
Mhm.
So there'd be no use by right allowed.
Correct. If it was approved the way we have it written in the ordinance. That's correct.
Commissioners, further questions for staff? One more, just a clarification, and, it says here, in a private place, so my understanding is that these sorts of card houses operate, and you mentioned before, as private clubs. So there are memberships for individuals to participate in these sort of activities.
Correct.
Thank you for that.
Mhm.
All right. So this is a public hearing. I want to remind everyone that we'll use the same information that I addressed earlier about courteous, cordial. We'll also try to keep to that 3 minutes. You'll see some lights on the dash in front of you. I show that I have at least 16, maybe more of these, and at 3 minutes each, that's putting us at 48 minutes, so around an hour. So I will encourage brevity if you have it in you. Will be, I think, appreciated by all parties. I'm just going to read these in the order they were received, so there's no sort of preference in the order. So we will open the public hearing, and as you come up, please just state your name and address for the record. And first, we have Mike Harrison.
Good evening, staff. Mike Harrison, 3706 Ridge Oak Way, Farmers Branch. I would like to talk a few topics about the current topic, social impact, community perception. A poker room may be perceived negatively by a lot of the different citizens here in Farmers Branch. They associated with gambling, illicit activities, etc. Farmers Branch prioritizes family-friendly activities, businesses, and this goes against the image we would all like to see in our city. The current location, which is under operation in another city, also offers massages, which would also require another special use permit, which has not been mentioned in any of these presentations. There is a risk of increased crime. While not all poker players engage in illegal activities, the association with gambling can attract criminal elements. All players usually come with cash in their pockets, so this concerns is another safety issue. I don't know how the city police department is going to enforce this because they're oppressed as they are today. Hoya Park opened up about a month, 2 months ago, and the police are pressed to control a park full of sixth graders. They cannot control the street vendors that come in. They've had to have the COP back them up, and they cannot handle the current situation. So I do not see how, based on the city manager's assessment, the police are fully staffed, how this is going to be not an issue. Economic concerns is another question I have. Poker rooms typically take a rake of all winnings. In Texas, this is not the case. So they have to charge membership fees, seat fees, and I do not see how in a small town this can be a sustainable option. If we offer and advertise this to the rest of the Metroplex, cities, San Antonio, Easton, there will be a huge influx of residents coming up for gambling. This concerns a lot of other issues, or brings many other issues that we probably do not want. There's a dependency of tourism that, like I mentioned, to keep this thing active, and I do not see how this is going to work. There's a health and well-being issue. Gambling addiction is a concern with many of the residents, and I think this is just perpetuating presence none of us like to see. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you for your brevity with the 3 minutes. It's appreciated. And for anybody further, if I cut you off, it's nothing personal. We're just going to stick to that 3 minutes. All right, next up we'll hear Vicki Harrison.
Vicki Harrison, 3706 Ridge Oak Way, Farmers Branch. Yes, my first point would be that it's interesting that not one city council member, not the mayor, no one has discussed any of this with the citizens. I thought they were supposed to serve us. And so that's a grave concern. The staff prepared the sleek presentation. Well, maybe those of us who are not in favor, we don't have an opportunity to have any presentation. So this has all been under the radar, which for me should be of grave concern to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Secondly, we spent $400,000 on a comprehensive plan. This was not in the comprehensive plan, nor was the mall. The mall was turned down because its special use permit. The mall was turned down because it was not in the comprehensive plan. So why is that not the same metric for this initiative? So, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. So that's another concern I have. Farmers Branch has a reputation of being a friendly, safe place. I don't think that this will add to that impression. Also, the new designation of city special use permits, who's it special for? Not the citizens. So when they want an initiative, when the mayor wants an initiative, in fact, he's announced it's coming, like it or not, then they just go forward now. This is very new in our city. And it's marginalized people. It is not even-handed. If you can't have, if the idea is that we created a comprehensive plan, we're going to stick to the comprehensive plan. But if it's a mall, we throw it out. If it's a game room, I think it should be turned down in kind. I don't think that this is special. And also, I would like to say that we've lived here for 30 plus years. And the environment and the respect for this city. A judge spoke recently at an event and said, why would Farmers Branch, this is a judge, a 20-year judge serving on the bench. Why would Farmers Branch want to do that? I've always thought of it as such a wonderful place. And if you need proof of that statement, I would be glad to provide it for you. But for us, after 30 years, this is a low place
Thank you so
in our
much.
experience.
Next, Jean M. Kearns.
Thank you so much. My name is Gene Kearns, 13720 Midway Road. I am one of the co-owners of Heritage Antiques and Interiors, a business located within the Special Overlay District, which I did not realize was going to be an experimental area outside the bounds of the way it was communicated. My lease is longer than that use has existed. And I'd like to speak about several concerns that we've had. Within the original plan for the special use district, it was outlined things that would be included. Listed within that, it's germane to this topic, was that there would be no sexually explicit businesses, alcohol providing or liquor providing entrances, or tattoo parlors. A year after that, a special use permit was granted and a tattoo parlor was opened next to my business. I think that we're here because we're talking about the way that the area is trending and the way that Farmers Branch wants to be perceived. You were told that the special use permit was going to be granted or was considered for the tattoo parlor because it was going to be a quiet, professional, spa-like setting. It's a building next to mine. Each day I see artists walking in. One walked in the other day with a sign that said, F me. Another one walked in the building with a shirt that said, I eat ass. And I apologize for having to say that, but that's what I see. You may say that we're here to talk about a game room, but what I'm talking about is the fact that we continue to expand the scope of what is appropriate within the boundaries of the city, and I do not believe that the topic or this idea of card rooms should be expanded. Again, 40% of the people in the survey indicated that the businesses like the Now Joins Mine should not be there, but it is there. So I'm not seeing control on the part of the city in maintaining a quality of what's going on in this area. 70% of the respondents to the survey when the special use or the entertainment overlay district was created, 70% of the respondents to that survey indicated that they would be concerned about when the original business is relisted, they would be concerned about crime, safety, and security. And listed among those businesses was not some of the things that we're seeing going down in that area. I think card rooms, again, fall in this vein of concerns, and we're at a new crossroads where your council and the city is going to decide which way do you want to go in the special entertainment district. Here's what I've learned. When advocates that want you to expand boundaries come before you, they paint the rosiest picture possible. In reality, it doesn't match. When these businesses move in, they are several shades off degree from anything that you would have been told and would have been suggested. I'm very concerned about this. I ask you to stop the decline and the trends that are moving in this area. When the special overlay district was presented, it was said we want to emulate things like Bishop Arts District, other areas that people do draw to. What I'm seeing is we are emulating or on the verge of emulating Harry Hines. I would suggest that we stop the erosion of this area. We stop treating the EOD as an experimental place. We stick to what it was outlined to be, and we maintain the standards of this city. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Evan West. Oh, it may be Aaron. Apologies. on my reading.
Hello, Erin West, 4280 Spring Valley. So y'all have met me numerous times over uses that aren't quite permitted in Farmers Branch, being the cigar bar and lounge on Inwood that is just outside of the entertainment district overlay, for which there were no rules and almost put me out of business until we actually moved over to the entertainment district last year, for which I had to come get a very expensive special use permit and went through all of that song and dance. And while I'm not necessarily against a card room, I want to make sure that the city is going to stand behind protecting other businesses if and when there's a problem.
Thank you. And apologies on your name. Next, Candace Adams.
Candace Adams, 3521 Pebble Beach Drive. I am trying really hard not to cry because I'm so upset about the fact that this is going on. And I want to tell you a little story about a gambling facility that I came across in Edom, Texas several years ago. It was a big old double-wide trailer. And I was lost, and I went in to try to get directions. I thought it was a travel lodge. I walk in, and it is covered in smoke, so thick you cannot even see. And there were probably 200 slot machines in here, and people packed right and left, and I was like, oh my God. So I backed out of there as soon as I could and reported it to the Van Zandt County District Attorney a couple of days later, told them if they didn't take care of that I would be contacting the Texas Rangers. Okay, this is the deal. Several weeks later, there was a 3-county raid. There were people human trafficking. There were people who had warrants out that they found stolen property, illegal guns, just in that one area. And that's just the things that they were able to print. My concern is that our city is going to go completely like that poor little town of Edom. It used to be a lovely little town, and now it is eat up with thugs and drugs, and I do not want my city to be like that. And some of these other places are up in Hutto, Texas. So I just thought, I'll just check and see what the crime statistics are. February 2023 to February 2024 in Hutto, Texas, where there's a gaming facility. Not saying that it has created all of this. However, their burglary is up 500% in 1 year. Vehicle burglary, 366.7%. Drug up 2%. So then I thought, well, I'll just check on Round Rock and see, what their statistics are. In 1 day, today, 4 out of 5 people that were ticketed that were on the records were driving intoxicated today. From yesterday to today, there were 24 things that were on the record. 11 of those were driving intoxicated. The others were theft, death, assault, and drugs. I love my town. I love my neighbors. And I love the fact that people move here because they want to raise their kids in an environment where you can go and talk to your neighbors and have a good time and not worry as much as you have to in so many other places. Please do not allow this. If people want to have that environment, and obviously they do, and obviously they go to Oklahoma, Louisiana, Austin, whatever, that's fine. keep that there, because our police don't need to have their lives put in danger either because somebody wanted to play a card game. And the other thing is it just going to be card games, or is it going to be like those poker machines and stuff like that? And that's a whole nother area of gambling and a whole nother area of people getting addicted to all kinds of things. And the driving intoxicated, that is really a major issue. So please, please do not allow this in our city. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Ellen Thelian, and apologies if I mispronounced that.
Ellen Thielen, 12935 Epsfield Road, Farmers Branch. I just kind of found out about this whole thing, as I felt like a lot of the citizens did. It's kind of been a clandestine operation that has just kind of come to our attention by word of mouth, because it's not something that we were told by the city council or the mayor. So I just basically would say that, why don't we do a feasibility study? Because I have talked to every citizen. I don't know one citizen that is in favor of this. And with my remaining time, I just like to say what he said, because he said it perfectly.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from George Broderick.
George Broderick, 13531 Rawhide. And I agree with all the previous speakers. To make it short and easy, this is not appropriate. It doesn't fit in Farmers Branch. This is a family-oriented town. It's a city with parks and raising kids. What do you want to raise? Gambling houses? City of Dallas is having trouble with it right now on Harry Hines. You're going through legal battles. And one of the city council members, quote, said, "When is this going to end?" They're spending all kinds of money on litigation. Do we in Farmers Branch need to do that for our residents? No. I say no. This doesn't fit. It's not appropriate. Please. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Sherry Collier.
My name is Sherry Collier. I live at 3165 Golden Oak, Farmers Branch. I am opposed to this proposition, and I've lived here 47 years, and I love Farmers Branch. Please, please, don't permit this to encroach on our families. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Brenda Broderick.
Good evening, Commission. Thank you for your service to the City of Farmers Branch. Much appreciated. I, like the rest, are opposed to this. My concern is the people that go and attend these, that would go into this card room or this poker place. Whose fault would it be when a man loses all his money and goes home to his wife and children penniless? I know you make money and you lose money, but it would be the man's fault? Yes. Would it be our fault for allowing the building to exist in the first place? That's a lot of pressure on y'all to make a decision that would cost people their livelihood, or potentially cost them their livelihood. This is very addictive. Smoking, drinking, drugs, gambling. Initially, it starts mild, like all addictions do, but it gets stronger and stronger and stronger until you are absorbed with it. It's all you can think about. It's not healthy for the person who is gambling. What about their wife or kids? Or what are they doing in there? They have a life to live. We all are born with a destiny, something productive we're supposed to do with our lives. There's not anything productive in that. They're not helping society. They're not being a good servant. And that's what we're here on earth to do. You're all volunteers. This is what we do with our lives. We volunteer. We bless people. We bring people up. We don't tear people down. We don't destroy our own lives. And I've got 12 points here, and that's just one. Litigation is going on. Children. So one person mentioned this is not close to the schools. Well, I was taught you don't go into any facility unless if you can't take your children with you. Nobody would take their children into this place. So that's one point. Massage therapists might be there. I don't know if that's true, but they're not working under a clinical environment, and they're not supposed to touch anyone under the influence. Alcohol is another issue. I know that they don't sell alcohol, at least in the one in Round Rock, but they do allow it to come in. Anyone can bring it in. So again, where's the limitation on that? I guess there's a lawsuit going on in Chicago, Illinois as well. Will our society endorse evil? Will we in Farmers Branch endorse evil? We consider this evil. And so I don't, thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, Tim Wright. And just make sure you state your name and address for the record.
Tim Wright, 2633 Farmers Branch Lane. So, thank you for serving, because I know it's thankless. But I'm here to speak out about this. I know entertainment. I understand entertainment. My brother's in the entertainment business. He's also a poker player. However, that doesn't make it right. An entertainment district is for entertaining, and yes, that's for the zoning, the council, and all of us that live here to decide what that means. If we decide this is entertainment, then shame on us. In 2022, the city of Farmers Branch had 50 aggravated assaults, 1 arson, 222 auto thefts, 174 burglaries, 1,133 larceny and thefts, 3 murders. By the way, I lived here almost on and off all of my life, which is 60 years. And before that, we had 1 murder in 50 years. 14 rapes, 20 robberies in a city of 40,000 people. Our personal Farmers Branch rating for crime is 4 out of 100. The city of Carrollton, which has 2.5 times as many people, their rating for crime is 24 out of 100, which is not fantastic. However, it's better than 4. I don't know what to do. I've spoken about the criminal piece. How are we going to enforce anything? We don't have a law. I know the city of Dallas is trying to finish a law. They've spent over $750,000 defending their law or trying to get a new one passed because they made 1 mistake. Can we afford to do that? I'm just saying, this is all public record. I went and looked at it. They are looking at trying to figure out how to do this, and they want out. What does that tell us? As a city, can we afford it? It's an expensive mistake if we make 1 mistake in the law or in the ordinance. These are special permits. As a business owner once said 5 minutes ago, are we permitting the right businesses? Are we writing the right special permits? Just because you can have a special exemption doesn't mean you need to use it. Defining entertainment is hard. However, defining adult entertainment is not that hard. There's a whole industry for it. There are several of them. Most of them don't reside here in Texas. And that's what I'm going to leave you with. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Jan Burke.
Hi, my name is Jan Burke. I live at 3530 Pinehurst Circle. I'm not near as professionally prepared as everybody else, but I will say a couple of things. Tonight was the first time I attended a planning and zoning meeting. I hope it takes more than one meeting for you guys to approve this special permit. I'll just say I will be shocked if that's all it takes. One, as the gentleman just said, one decision could have large ramifications. I suggest people look at what's happening at Hoya Park, the traffic. I went by there last week, 10 o'clock at night. There are people there. Little kids are there. There's been drug problems. There's been traffic problems. There's been homeless problems. That's not counting accidents that I understand have occurred at the park. That is litigation. That is expensive. We pay for that. I don't know how much the business will be on the hook for that, but we, the citizens, are. I hope you really consider this closely. I am so opposed to this, but I want to come across reasonable. But please, take your time, do studies, crime, visibility, traffic, safety. None of us got notice about this. And I bet if we had more time when we talked to more citizens, I think you would have a lot more people here giving you their comments. I appreciate you listening to me and actually putting up with me. But thank you. And I hope you do reject this. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Jean Kearns. Oh, you already spoke. Sorry. There are some duplicate. I think you might have emailed ahead. Apologies. Next up, Rick Johnson.
Oh, I'm the last one. I just gave you mine.
Actually, I see one in blue ink. You might have done that earlier, but it says,
There's two Rick Johnsons. Oh, okay. I apologize, Rick.
Rick Johnson
No
at.
problem, Rick.
Sorry about, I didn't know that either, at 2930.
Yes.
Okay, please state your name and address for the record.
Rick
Thank you.
Johnson, 2930 Harley, Farmers Branch, Texas, lifelong resident. The problem we have here is most of our staff doesn't live in our wonderful city. They haven't enjoyed it from the start. They have no idea. They're just hustling any business in here that they can, including a bunch of apartments. We won't even discuss that now. The whole problem with this situation is they're going to paint a beautiful picture, everything that's wonderful. And you guys are here for us, the citizens, and to make the correct decisions. Well, you know what? We don't need that revenue if we spend our money wisely. That has not been happening. You can just go to city council meetings and figure that out, no problem at all. What you have here is you have people that are coming in seemingly no problem at all. Oh, this is wonderful, this is great. They don't tell you about the shills that end up at the tables, setting people up and taking their money. They don't tell you about corrupt dealers and everything else, but they'll tell you they can stop that, but somehow they can't even do it in Las Vegas, but they're going to do it here in Farmers Branch. They don't tell you the crime. When's the strip club going to open over there, right? What's next? Is this really what we want for our city? We came to a humble, modest city, and they're trying to drag us into something and change us. And you guys need to realize that. You don't understand. We have lightning in a bottle. You're never going to recreate what we have here. And once it's gone, it's gone. And we owe it to the people that we came behind, the people that will come behind us, not to do this stuff. It's supposed to be a city in the park. Now it's turning into the city in a courtyard of an apartment complex. And now you want to put it into, if you approve this, it's going to be the city in the courtyard in a rundown, dilapidated, horrible apartment complex. People are going to eye it. People are going to come in from Dallas. When Dallas wants to run, you got to think about that. They'll take anything. Really consider that. But there's going to be people that are going to come in here. There's going to be a group from Dallas, all the hidden games and stuff. I grew up around this stuff. And I'm going to tell you, I've seen people lose whole farms. I've seen the most stupid, ridiculous stuff. And you want to know what? We don't need that here. Let them go someplace else. I'm assuming one of the Dallas places you're talking about is Sam Moon's right over here, right? That we have. They got a game room in there. They also got the massage parlor. They also got the restaurant that everybody goes in and comes out a couple hours later. We don't want this for our city. Honestly, we don't want it. We don't want the money. We don't want none of that stuff. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Up next, Douglas Polk.
Hi, my name is Doug Polk, 1401 South I-35. So I'd like to start off with saying I own Lodge Card Club. We are the largest card club in the state, and I'm pretty sure that I'm the reason why this has started to come forward. And I'd like to take a moment just to talk about what card rooms can offer and also talk about maybe dispelling some of the myths that people are talking about here. I do want to just say for a moment, I can tell a lot of local people are passionate about this, so I would at least like to bring the correct information forward so that we can think about it. There are 70 card rooms across the state of Texas. Basically, every major city other than Dallas-Fort Worth allows them pretty much in their entirety. In this particular metropolitan area, there are certain areas that do or don't allow them, and as has been talked about before, you can sort of do as you see fit. My card room, Lodge Card Club, I employ over 200 people. We produce significant tourism and revenue dollars for the city. In fact, our show is one of the most professional high-end shows. You can see it on YouTube. We get about 100 million views a year. People really enjoy watching our players play poker, and it is incredibly professional. Our facility is a 27,000 square foot facility in Round Rock, Texas. People call it the Mecca of poker really here in the state. I want to just kind of go through a few things just to dispel some of these ideas. There's ideas that these are thugs and criminals. The average person that plays at our card room is twice as likely to have a bachelor's degree as the average person in Texas. Poker is a game of skill. It is a game where you have to think and use strategy. Criminal, low-life people are not going to do well in that environment. So it's a lot of college professors and tech guys and people who are smart, high-income earners that want to play a game that has an intellectual passion and pursuit. As far as a lot of the other things that are brought forward today, there are way too many for us to go through in 3 minutes to rattle those off. But I do want to say that I think that we have a lot of strength, a lot of positive things we can bring to the city. It is a significant tourism driver. We have 30-something thousand members. And I think that if you give me a chance to explain that and show you guys what we have to offer, I think it can provide tremendous value to the city.
Thank you. Next, Bradley Beringer. And last but not least, Rick Johnson. Thank you.
The second Rick Johnson. I'm so sorry, by the way. Rick Johnson, 14026 Prestwick Drive in Farmers Branch. My wife and I moved here over 26 years ago to raise our children in this environment. That's what Farmers Branch has always been all about. What you've heard, I haven't heard one that I'm aware of, one citizen stand up here and speak for Card Room tonight. And as you've also heard, and I've actually heard some great questions from you this evening as you guys are kind of pondering, which is fantastic. Because I don't understand why we would even get near this. Someone mentioned gray, in a gray area, maybe even one of you earlier in your questions. But why would we even get close to something that's not above reproach as a city? I don't really get that. We're hearing the things and reading the things, and all I know is what I read about what's happened in the city of Dallas in particular. Other people who have spoken tonight know more than I do about that. But the reality is we are a family-oriented community. Card rooms and Texas Hold'em poker doesn't fit there. I mean, if somebody wants to go to Vegas, go to Vegas. Go do what they want to do, but that doesn't fit in our city. And there's no citizens up here speaking for this in any way, shape, or form. And as someone mentioned earlier, if more of the citizens knew this was even being considered as a part of economic development on the east side, you would have a lot more citizens up here speaking against that. Surely there are better ways to generate revenue for our city. Thank you.
Thank you. But thank you for your public comments. And also, I want to thank everyone for being adherent to that 3 minutes. I really appreciate your brevity so that all voices could be heard in that. We are in an open public meeting, so I will look to my commissioners, see if there's any further discussion in this public meeting. Seeing none,
I'll make a motion to close the public meeting.
thank you.
I'll make the motion to second it.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor of closing the public meeting? All right. With that, we do have an action before us. We have a consideration, a request to amend the comprehensive zoning ordinance.
Madam Chair, I move to recommend denial.
Okay, we have a recommendation for denial.
I second.
Okay. Any further discussion on the matter?
Yeah, Don, just that it just does seem a little bit too fast. I mean, I'm hearing a lot of comments about this is the first time people have heard about it. Certainly the first time I heard about it when I saw the agenda. And we're dealing with a topic that is certainly people feel passionate about. And so, yeah, I mean, I think maybe proceeding a little slower might be to all of our benefits.
Thank you. Any further comments or considerations? Okay, with that, we do have an action before us, which is a recommendation for denial of the amendment to the comprehensive zoning ordinance with this new use. So we will vote on that. All those in favor of denial, just making sure that's clear. All right, and with that, it carries. Our report will go to City Council
May 7th.
also on May 7th. Right. All right, and with that, we will adjourn our meeting. It is 8:36 p.m. Thank you all.